Shalom, Apostle coming back at you with the truth, giving all praise to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rakah Kwadash. And I'm going to title this video, Blessed is He That Readeth. And this is from Revelation 1 verse 3. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, which is talking about the book of Revelation, but the blessed is he that readeth applies to the whole scriptures. You have to read and understand these scriptures. You got a lot of clowns out there that call themselves Israelites, and they're Israelites, and they decide to become prophets and teachers, and they go out there and basically they confuse Jake out there into waking up to the truth. They're coming up with their own breakdowns. They're making it up as they go along. They're following somebody that taught a breakdown, and they like the way it was broken down. So they'll say, I'll break it down this way, or another group will say, I'll break it down that way. And now, to get the understanding of the scriptures, you have to know how to read. You have to know how to comprehend. And that means you have to know some Hebrew, and you have to know some Greek. Anyway, it says, blessed, the third verse, Revelation 1 verse 3, blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. This revelation was given to John the apostle. Some call him John the Revelator, Saint John the Divine, and he received these prophecies, which the book of Revelation is nothing but a book of prophecy. And this book was given to John to give to the 7 churches of Asia Minor, which there's no remnant of the 7 churches of Asia Minor. Meaning, when I say the remnant, I'm talking about the people. So this book was lost and brought back together with the whole book, which is the scriptures, which includes the Apocrypha. Now, there was a debate between, debate, whatever you want to call it, between Dr. James White, the Edomite, and Rakah of the GOCC. And one of the first things that Dr. James White, the Edomite, brought up was, comparing the King James Version to other versions of the Bible, and how do you know which version is which? Well, you'll know through the Spirit. Because if you ask me that question, I said I couldn't give you an answer. I go by the King James, but I also read other versions of the scriptures just to compare. But he said Dr. James White, the Edomite, said that a good translation is the Geneva, which is older than the King James, which is true. 15. I got to look it up. There was one version that was in 1560 AD, and then there was another one, I believe, in 1590 AD. Both of them are older than the King James. So what I did was I looked through both the King James and the Geneva Bibles, and they pretty much say the same thing. They go off on certain words here and there, but they pretty much say the same thing. So you can get the gospel from the Geneva Bible. You can read, and I've read through it. Anyway, getting back to this, blessed is he that readeth. You can't just pick up a Bible and all of a sudden say, oh, I know the scriptures, I'm going to throw some fringes on a t-shirt and I'm going to go out there, or a robe, whatever, and go out there and teach. That's why there's so much confusion among this among the different Israelite groups. Now, what I wanted to get into is this whole 400-year prophecy of from 1619 to 2019, which that has nothing, that's not mentioned in the scriptures. The 1619 to 2019 is not scriptural. And what I did was I went to Acts, the 7th chapter. I'll give you the verse in a minute. Anyway, I'll go to the second verse, Acts 7, verse 2. And he said, men, brethren, and this was Stephen, and fathers, hearken. The Most High of glory appeared unto our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he dwelt in Haran. Now, there's a lot of Israelites. You go out there and you read this verse to them and say, where's Mesopotamia located and where is Charan located? A lot of them won't even know. It said, and said unto him, get thee out of thy country, because Abraham was originally from Mesopotamia, or Ur of the Chaldees. It says, third verse, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, thy family. And because when you read about his father, Terah, he was following other gods, and the Most High took Abraham, chose him, and the Most High presented himself to Abraham. And he said he was going to deal with him and come into the land which I shall show thee. Fourth verse. Then came he out of the land of the Chaldeans and dwelt in Charan, and from thence, when his father was dead, he removed him into this land, which that's a custom wherein ye now dwell. Fifth verse. And he gave him none inheritance in it, no, not so much as to set his foot on. Yet he promised that he would give it to him for possession. And we know what that land is. And to his seed after him, when as yet he had no child. Sixth verse. And the Most High spake on this wise, that this seed should sojourn in a strange land, and that they should bring them into bondage and entreat them evil 400 years. And that's talking about, as you read down, it's talking about so-called ancient Egypt, because as you read to the 8th verse, it says in Acts 7 verse 8, and he gave him the covenant of circumcision, and so Abraham begat Isaac and circumcised him the 8th day, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat the 12 patriarchs, and the patriarchs moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt, and the Most High was with him. So this is what that 400 years is talking about. Now you got some clowns out there that'll say, well, it says 430 years. Yeah, because they were afflicted for 400 years. If the first 30 years they were treated fairly by that particular Pharaoh. Let me jump down to the 17th verse. But when the time of promise drew nigh, which the Most High had sworn to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt. So what are we talking about? We're talking about ancient Egypt, as they call it. Let me read that again, 17 verse. But when the time of the promise drew nigh, which the Most High had sworn to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt. Till another king rose, and they multiplied in Egypt for how many years? The first 30 years. And we're going to get into that in Genesis, the 15th chapter. It says, till another king arose, another Pharaoh, which knew not Joseph. Because who made Egypt great? Through interpreting dreams, it was Joseph. So he became great in the sight of the king of Egypt, or the Pharaoh. It says the same dwelt subtly with our kindreds and evil entreated our fathers. I just want to try to go to the point. And this was a period of going on 400 years, and Moses was born. And we can say the last 100 years of that 400-year period. It tells you how the Pharaoh's daughter took up and nourished him for her son. So she presented this son to her father and the people, the royalty around them, because they believed that Ra gave a miracle. So that was a miracle baby, you know. Now would Ra is not even a god, it's a demon. Now would Ra send her a white Edomite baby? No. Which you had Edomites around. What was sent to her was Moses, which looked like an Egyptian. But why? Because he was dark skinned and he had woolly hair. It goes on to say, 22nd verse, and Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, blase, blase. I'm just trying to jump down. But what we picked out, let me go back to it. Let's jump back to the 6th verse. And the Most High spake unto the on this wise, that his seed should sojourn in a strange land. That land is what they call today Egypt, or Martezayim, and that they should bring them into bondage and entreat them evil 400 years. Not talking about America, because as you read down, it speaks about the build up to the time of them going to Egypt and being in Egypt and being treated well in Egypt, until another Pharaoh rose up. 8th verse. And he gave him the covenant of circumcision, and so Abraham begat Isaac and circumcised him, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat the 12 patriarchs, which they were all circumcised. And it goes into the whole thing of the scenario of them, the brothers of Joseph sold Joseph to Ishmaelites, and the Ishmaelites sold Joseph to the so-called Egyptians. So this is the fulfillment of the dream that Abraham had. Now let's go to Genesis, and we went through this before. 15. Genesis 15, and we're going to go all the way down 11 verse 12 verse is good. I'll start from the 12th verse. You can read the whole chapter. Anyway, it says Genesis 15 verse 12. And when the sun was gone down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. And lo, you got a lot of Israelites out there that don't. There's some, most do, that don't even know the difference between the name Abram and Abraham. And lo, and horror of great darkness fell upon him. And 13th verse, and he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. We just read that in the book of Acts. So it's the same story. And when you go to the book of Acts and you read what Stephen said, he followed suit with the story, with the scenario. That Abraham was summoned out of Ur of the Chaldees, or Mesopotamia, and he went north up to Charan, then he went down south into past the land of Canaan, into the land of Egypt. So he was in that region, and that was in that region. That's where they sold Joseph to Egypt, or sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites, and the Ishmaelites sold Joseph to the so-called Egyptian Pharaoh. But he showed his greatness through interpreting dreams, and the Pharaoh to showed his kindness by setting them up. It's the same story, man. Genesis 15 chapter and Acts the 7th chapter. So I don't know how the hell you're going to get America out of this. It shows you that these guys do not read, they don't comprehend, they don't go into the Greek. You really don't even have to go to the Greek and the Hebrew on this breakdown right here. You know? This is talking about ancient Egypt. That 400 years from 1619 to 2019 has nothing to do with Genesis, the 15th chapter, and Acts, the 7th chapter. Anyway, what I'm going to do, Most High willing, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua Ratazah, I'm going to go into find all these doctrines, and I did a video on doctrines, and what does the word or term doctrine mean. And when you go into the scripture, you find out there's only one doctrine. There's no 5 doctrines. There's only one doctrine, one belief system. So there's a bunch of Israelites or Christians or whatever group out there that claim they know the scriptures. They don't understand the scriptures, and they're leading the people astray. And that's why we here at Great Millstone say that we have 100% truth, because we make it a point to go into these scriptures. So this nonsense of 400 years in America is nowhere in the scriptures. It's nowhere in the scriptures. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say shalom, and it's on to the next one. Shalom.